Great. Hi, everybody, and welcome to our Hangout on Air entitled Wrapping Up and Amping Up Behavioral Strategies for the End of the Year. I'm Lily Talcott, Master Educator, and with me, as always, is
Liddy Coyle, Master Educator.
And we are joined by some fabulous panelists that we will introduce, or we'll have them introduce themselves in just a moment today. If you are an educator that uses learning targets, today's learning target that you might think of in kind of a loose way is I can use information from today's panelists to reflect on my behavioral support strategies for our students.
And if you want to comment during the broadcast, if you're watching this live on Wednesday the 11th, you can, if you're on Google Plus, you can do the share a comment. If you're watching on YouTube, right below our video, there is a place to add a comment, and we'll be checking that during the broadcast and trying to address any questions or comments you might have.
We'll be speaking in generalities today. When we're talking about students, we of course want to respect confidentiality.
So also, we're very grateful to our panelists, who we are going to introduce in just a moment, for their experiences, and they're going to share those. However, we don't know your students, the people that are watching, and today we're sharing examples and personal stories of developing strategies and systems to support students. Please work with your PLC and your support staff to best meet the needs of your students.
We're going to turn it over to our panelists. Brian, can you start us off?
Yeah, so I don't have a title below, but I am Brian Goodman. I teach 5th grade at Enfield.
Thanks. Sarah.
Hi, Sarah Hoffman. I teach 1st grade at BJM.
Sheila.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sheila Kiseloff, and I'm the school social worker at Fall Creek Elementary School.
Great. Thanks so much. So we're going to dive right in. We know that developing strong relationships and systems for supporting students start long before June. So before we talk about your work wrapping up the year, could each of you talk a bit about strategies and systems you have developed or helped to develop to support students' social emotional needs throughout the year? And Sheila, we're going to ask you to lead off on that.
Liddy, you're absolutely correct. All of these systems and strategies must start at the very beginning of the school year. And the one main components that I think about are the Tier 1 interventions and systems and strategies that hopefully all classrooms and schools have in place. When I talk about Tier 1 systems, I think about school-wide positive behavioral interventions and supports, or SWPBIS, that I know many of our elementary schools, perhaps one or two of our middle schools, and I know the high school has been working hard to try to get into place. And so these are systems that try to get everyone to be on the same page, if you will, use the same kind of language, have same expectations for all students, and if those expectations aren't met, then to have the same kinds of consequences, so that the kids know exactly what to expect if they're in one classroom as opposed to another classroom as opposed to another area. So that's one thing that we have been doing here at Fall Creek. And what happens is at the very beginning of the school year, we teach all the kids expectations in the common areas being the cafeteria, the playground, the bathrooms, the hallways, and that kind of stuff. So no matter what, who the adult is that you encounter in those areas, hopefully the kids will know that the expectations will be consistent across the board, and that the consequences will also be consistent across the board if those expectations are not met. And so we really infuse our program with positive praise, both verbal and positive phone calls home, positive postcards. So we try to, as much as possible, be positive, so that if we do have to offer up a consequence for whatever misbehavior may have happened, then hopefully that there will be a bank account, if you will, of positive that has happened beforehand. I know many of our district employees have been trained in responsive classroom, and so in the specific classrooms, I really encourage the classroom teachers to practice what they've learned with interactive modeling and all those kinds of really positive responsive classroom tools that they've learned from over the course of their trainings in either responsive 1 or responsive 2. So and I think the first there's a book that I think we were all given at one point or another about the first 6 weeks of school. Those are definitely the most important weeks, and what I always encourage all the adults in this building is, the academic stuff there's enough time for that. That'll come. But if you don't lay out the groundwork or the expectations immediately, you're going to constantly be using your year, your classroom time, your teaching time, trying to teach these expectations as these issues come up. So lay out the groundwork, and seriously, it'll make a huge difference. And part of that is interactive role modeling for what the expected behaviors are, coming up with rules together, rules that the kids can live with and buy into, not just rules that the adult thinks that should happen in the classroom. And I also do another Tier 1 kind of intervention called Second Step, and I know that of classroom teachers and social workers throughout the district do Second Step. It's a pro-social skills, anti-violence. I think originally it was marketed as like an anti-violence curriculum. And there was a recent, in the last year or so, article in the New York Times about such programs like Second Step, which are so important and as important as the academic learning that kids go through. So those are three of the Tier 1 kinds of interventions that we do here at Fall Creek. I know a lot of the other schools do the same to varying degrees. And we have really seen that it makes a huge difference in the data that our inquiry team is analyzing about the number of kids who have referrals. So even though this is only my 3rd year here, I have already seen a difference in those Tier 1 types of interventions. And as with the academic aspect, it has to be taught, it has to be good quality behavioral interventions, just like with the academic interventions. Okay.
I think I totally agree with everything, Sheila, that you're saying. And I think a piece of that I found is everything that you said, and just making sure that you're very clear with it, making sure that expectations, sometimes I'll assume that's basic, but I just find don't assume, really just take things perspective. And also when you're being clear, that also I think the biggest thing is consistency. Mm-hmm. So when, if something happens, the kids know this will be the response, or this is how we act. And like you were saying, that it's not only in the classroom, but that the special areas and the playground, that it's consistent, the kids know what to expect, they know what the behavior is, and I just find that consistency is huge. And also going into the end of the school year, it's kind of like the kids are getting excited and they have energy. Sometimes I feel teachers tend to want to kind of pull back and let them do what they want, and of course I think that it's a time to enjoy and be together, but I think that keeping those clear, consistent, set the rules, the expectations, keeping that throughout the end of the year is really important.
Mm-hmm. And what I would say is, not only do you teach those expectations at the very beginning of the school year, but you also have what I call booster, or maybe I'm not the only one who uses that word terminology, but you have to have these booster lessons just to remind and teach the kids again what the expectations are. And especially at the end of the school year, I know that as the adults, working with our kids, sometimes we're just when will it be over? But we have to kind of shore up our own reactions and our own energy levels and whatnot, because the kids are counting on us right up until June, whenever we're done. I'm sorry, I don't know when we're done, but we need to stay consistent. We need to stay on. We need to stay as diligent as we were at the beginning of the school year.
Yeah.
So that's something that I definitely believe in, especially since kids themselves in their own minds, they're like, oh, it's the end of the school year, and they're kind of losing it. So we have to kind of shore them up extra, like an extra amount. So
Absolutely. I agree too.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I'm going to jump in just a little bit. And I'm glad you guys transitioned into that end of the year. You're right. We're getting close. We've got just a couple more weeks. And there can be some more tension. There can be some more challenging behaviors that either arise or come back again. Let's talk about what some of those specific preventative behavioral structures or strategies that we've put in place and that have been successful. And Brian, do you want to start us off with that?
Yeah.
Continue the conversation with that.
Well, I did want to respond to the booster thing, Sheila. I think that's a really good idea. I know as a 5th grade teacher, we have kids who change throughout the year. So they come in kind of their 4th grade world and by the end of the year, they've kind of hit pre-adolescence. So there's a lot of like milestones throughout the year where they act differently than they did before. And I find myself having to, like the booster may be, like I've noticed you may be talking more mean to each other. And that just may be how it is. Like by the end of 5th grade, kids are experimenting with being social. They're experimenting with all kinds of ways to be around each other, and they're trying new things, and sometimes that can be rude, sometimes it can be humor, sometimes it can be lots of different things. And so the booster may be like, we haven't actually had to talk about this because you haven't been to this point yet, but now that you're at this point, like we may need this kind of booster or actually a new lesson on how to talk to each other. So I like that idea of booster, but I also think that a new teach throughout the year is okay. Like in the middle of the year, as kids are changing and as kids are becoming more of a group together and breaking the ice, that sometimes new things like that are good. I know at Enfield we do a lot of putting kids in different groups all throughout the year. So in 5th grade, definitely, but in many of our grades, like I see all the kids in a grade. Our reading specialist works with all the kids in a grade. Our special educator works with almost all of our kids. I mean, we all work with all the kids. And I know that because we all work with kids, we just do lots of different grouping throughout the year to help kind of manage and re-manage behavioral expectations. And even at the end of the year, we've like regrouped again for a final project. And I think a lot of that can be good because we can see kind of which kids are, some kids actually step it up at the end of the year and say, hey, summer's out. Like I can go outside, like I'm getting my energy out. I actually see a lot of behavior that's maybe better than like the dead of winter where you just feel depressed and you go home and there's not a lot of things to do. So some kids are in that kind of state and they want to explore, and we can meet some kids there. Other kids, yeah, maybe more off the handle and they just need a more focused end of the year thing to work on. So I think that's one strategy that we've always, I think, used the 4 years that I've been here, is being able to scoop kids from group to group based on kind of what they need. And I think that's a good place to start.
Great.
Sarah, Sheila, do you want to add to those as well?
I'm gonna be honest that that Brian's video or audio kept kind of like in and out and stuff. So I caught bits of it.
Every third word.
Yeah, just about Brian. Seriously. So I kind of understood the gist, I think.
Yeah, and what Brian was talking about was having the ability throughout the year to regroup students makes it a great strategy for the end of the year, to regroup kids across the grade level, have different teachers working with them. Another thing, Brian, I think it's great to remember that some kids do improve their behavior or really sort of like dig in for those last couple of weeks, so that's important. Any other things that you're seeing you're doing, Sarah or Sheila, just for these last few weeks?
Yeah, the thing that I'll say with the regrouping that Brian mentioned is I think that happens all throughout the school year. As kids learn skills, they might be in a certain group that needs to learn specific kinds of skills, whether it's social or academic, and then as they learn it, after you've evaluated if they've learned it or not, move them on to another group. And so I think having that kind of movement and fluidity, if you will, for the groups is really important, so that when we get to the end of the school year, so that especially when we get to the end of the school year, we don't have kids saying, this is like the same stuff that we've been working on all school year. Like, I knew it at the beginning of the school year. I knew how to, I knew how to walk in the hallway. I was consistently walking in the hallway a certain way. I was consistently making sure I wasn't running up the steps 2 at a time. Like, why do I have to relearn this for the rest of my class? And so that's part of hi, Susan.
Oh, hi. Oh, my God.
How are you?
That's weird.
That's part of the movement that I'm thinking about also, is like, if you've learned it, like, you don't have to relearn it. You can go learn something else, Yeah. So I think that's true with the academics as well as with behavioral, because, seriously, I feel badly for the kids who are like, oh, my goodness, this again, and they already got it, like, a month ago, so.
I have this great professor when I was getting my master's in special ed. She would always say, if they could, they would.
Yes.
And they can't right now, and they need a little bit of help. And remembering like who those kids are and who those kids aren't.
Your professor must have been a Ross Green.
Yeah, totally.
Yes.
Yeah, right on. Sarah, you were going to jump in as well.
Yeah. So one thing that I'm finding, and it's every year it's different with different groups of kids, but one thing I'm finding this year is that behaviors that I saw in the beginning of the year that sort of smoothed out are starting to pop up a little bit more. And I think one thing is that they came in, I didn't really have a relationship with them, so the transition was hard. We set the expectations, created the relationships, we had some clear behavioral plans in place, and things really worked. And now I think that they're hearing other kids really talking about the end of the year, hearing about transitions into second grade, and again are sort of starting to get nervous about that time. So we've had to revisit some of those behavior plans and set it in place. And with this class, we're talking about transition and we're celebrating at the end of the year, but we're not doing a lot of it, at least not yet, because I'm really seeing a lot of kids are really concerned about that, and I want them to be able to still to know that they're going to transition, but that also we're still here, we're still together, and that I want to have this time to learn and be together and not totally focused and just freaked out about moving to second grade. So I'm trying to sort of find a balance between honoring the need to talk about it, but also then just saying, okay, let's move on, and I don't want kids crying, and one particular student is crying every single day as he sees the calendar and says summer's coming, and so it's hard to see. And so,
and that is, I mean, Sarah, you're absolutely right. That is a fine balance, because of the fact that you want to celebrate the maturation, the achievement of first grade, and whatnot. But for a lot of kids who have behavioral difficulties in school, I mean, there's a reason, right? It doesn't come from nowhere. And so the child who might be crying every day because looking at the calendar, like, school is the best thing for so many of the kids. Like, that's their only, I shouldn't say it's their only, but for some kids, school is like their favorite place.
Yeah.
The teacher is like their nurturing, adult. Their cafeteria meals are like their only consistent meals or whatever. So I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind as we're nearing the end of the school year, that although most of us possibly are like, celebrating the end and the transition, for some kids it's like the worst thing that could happen. And we, of course, see it during breaks also, long breaks or even long weekends, kids who are just kind of like, I'd rather be in school because I know what to expect. I know what's going to happen. So,
and a lot of those kids, I think, they do better with that predictable routine.
Of course, yes, absolutely.
Changing it up and having those celebrations, but also still keeping it so that they know what's coming and it feels like first grade to them has also been important.
Yes, absolutely.
I want to talk a little bit about the last 6 weeks of school. I feel we talk a lot about the first week.
Yeah.
but the last 6 weeks I think are just as important. Not as a time where you're going to let your behaviors go out the window, but maybe as a time like, so for fifth graders, we go to Boynton and we visit Boynton, and many fifth graders have apprehension. And then they go to Boynton and they come back with more apprehension because they see the building and it's huge. And so I feel like, if this was responsive classroom, we would take a half an hour and we would talk about it. So how do we feel? What did we notice? Things like that. Where it's true, like it might be better to go on to a math lesson or to a whatever lesson, but I think like giving kids a little more time to air their anxieties about transitioning in those last 6 weeks is like a really good thing. And even if it's just for some kids to hear, hey, this kid's nervous too. The kid who seems to have it all together is also nervous. We're all nervous, whether it's Boynton, at least for us, or a grade level switch. I think that's good, and we've been doing a lot of that in fifth grade, just a lot of going on different trips and then processing our experiences together.
Yeah,
great.
Every third word?
I heard.
We can hear you.
Yeah. So, Sarah was talking about she has a child that's crying every day, and I think that we've all encountered this where these your great strategies that you've had or that you're revisiting or that you're working on the last 6 weeks, just they aren't working for a student that's struggling with some social emotional stuff for all those reasons we've talked about. So what kind of things do you do when you're faced with this? How do you support these students that just all these great ideas aren't working for? Sarah, do you want to lead off on that?
Sure. I mean, my first go-to is my team. I take everything to them and just say, like, they don't teach most of the kids. We do some flexible grouping, but just being a teacher on the team, it's a familiar face and they know who it is, and so I'll just bring it to the table and say, here's what's happening, here's what I've tried, like, let's do some brainstorming. And often just being able to talk it out is huge, and getting other suggestions. And I've done that with a few kids this year. Also accessing Bob, our AP, this year, just bringing him in, pulling as many people in as you can, and getting those strategies, and then also using them as resources. So some of the other people on the team have been part of the behavior plan, because sometimes they need a break out of my classroom and something where they can just they need to be removed. So that for me is absolutely huge. That's the biggest asset for sure.
That's great. Sheila and Brian?
I think counting on your team is absolutely key, just like you said, Sarah. Going back to responsive classroom, using the buddy classroom system, and I think more than anything else that I've noticed that kids need at this time of year is they need validation. And I know that's like such a social work word or whatever, but seriously, like validation, like, oh, I can see that you're feeling blah 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 blah. Can you tell me what that's about? And that's like one of the biggest tricks that I can that I can share with anyone is just you don't have to take like a whole counseling session or whatever, but just take a minute and say, I can see that you're feeling blah blah blah. Can you tell me more about that? Or let's have lunch together and you can tell me. And I know everyone's time is crunched, and you're trying to wrap up the year, but here are these little people who are just kind of trying to hang on by a thread themselves. And what I would always say is, like, utilize the resources, as Sarah said, utilize the resources in your building. Just because someone has the title of social worker or counselor or AP or whatever does not necessarily mean that that's the person that the child has the best relationship with. So I always advocate, like, our daytime custodian, G. I mean, he has come to me and said, like, if you would like me to talk to this kid about, whatever, I'm willing to do that, because maybe it's not my area that I can, like, totally, that I'm not very knowledgeable about. And so, the custodians sometimes are like, the biggest help, for many reasons in a building, and they often have a really great relationship with some of our kids. And so I would say utilize the the adult resources in your class, in your buildings as much as possible. Don't just, go to whomever has the title who you think, best would be able to best support that kid. So.
Yeah, I wanted to add that I feel like at our school, we try at the end of the year to kind of go down to the grade below and just start making some relationships. We try to do that during the year, but I know I typically go down and talk with fourth grade students, and we just had a band concert today, and I felt like I was giving a lot of my attention to the fourth graders, just kind of setting that groundwork, knowing that so when they come into my class next year, I'll know their names, I'll already have them down, because I've been trying to just say something to them this year, or start that, and that I think that feels good because the kids, if they have anxiety about their new teachers or about being fifth grade or about being whatever, then at least there's something more than their classroom teacher to kind of hang on to, and so that's always felt good for us, I think, in fifth grade.
I just have a question for you. Because I think that's great. I love that. I think a lot of kids often benefit from transitioning like that. Do you get to know the whole fourth grade, or do you, by the end of the year, know who's going to be in your class and you can specifically kind of connect with them?
I think both. So we work closely with our fourth grade team. The fifth graders do because we work in pods. Do you guys have pods at BJM in Fall Creek? Yeah, pods, groups. So
you don't mean like the physical pods, do you?
No. Every PLC we have is a fourth grade meeting, or a second, third grade meeting, or a K1. Every single PLC. So.
Yes. So a grade level that's up or down from you. Right.
In our case, just down. But
okay.
Yeah, so we meet with fourth grade teachers all the time, and I just think there's some kind of camaraderie or colleagueship where I think the kids see us as a connected unit, even though none of their kids would come to me for class. So because of that, we know their class list. We've had our kind of class list conversation about at this point every year, and so that can help me target some kids that I know are going to be in my group next year.
Yeah, that's great.
Cool. That's really cool. Great. Thanks. So we also know that taking care of ourselves helps us get through all of this, whether we like it or not. It can be really, really important to ensure that our own personal emotional well-being is taken care of. So how do you guys take care of yourselves during this often stressful time? What do you guys do?
Well, I think being able to talk to our grade level teams, whether it's during the day or whether it's during PLC or whether it's after school or whatever, is huge. It's like somebody who, who isn't in the same boat that you're in. But outside of school, I think it's really important to just socialize and just kind of just be a human being rather than just an educator. So, all those things that we've learned over the years about exercising and music and, all that kind of good stuff. So, but I think, it's different for different people, what works for them.
Yeah, I think sharing frustrations with the team is definitely helpful. And then I just work out like crazy. That's huge for me. Yeah.
I had when I taught in Chicago, I had a year where I felt I left the kids and it wasn't a good leaving. Whatever, it was a hard class or something, and we didn't part on great terms. It just felt like, they were good riddance to me. I was good riddance to them, and I guess I remember that year, saying, this is a good time. Put the energy in these couple weeks to try to just tie everything up with a bow with the kids. So my desk is a mess, and I don't have my assessments in and all that stuff. But with the kids, try to put a bow on it. So I try to make awards every year, a specific award for each kid. So it might be most, most likely to have a country song on their radio, because the kids sing country music all the time, and something just where I can put that kid in a positive place in my mind and end the relationship in a positive way. And I guess that's I think where the most anxiety comes in about school is if you're feeling like things aren't right with you and a kid. And so if you can get that kind of locked up and feeling good, that feels good to me.
Yeah. Right on. I found one of the things for me that was really helpful along those lines, Brian, as far as taking care of myself, was reconnecting maybe with a kiddo who I was struggling with by sitting down and just doing something fun with them. So like having lunch or doing something goofy together, like playing outside during recess. Yeah, like I have a million things to do, but it's good for my soul, it's good for my kids' souls if like we get to connect in that way. I'm right there with you. And also making sure like you have some balance in your own personal life. It's good too. Great. So we want to thank our panelists, and we really appreciate them sharing their strategies and joining us today. We'll give them an opportunity, if they would like, to say one last thing, and then we're going to close up.
Let's see. I guess what I'm going to say is best wishes for the next couple of weeks of school. Just remember that these little ones are counting on us to be there for them, to just kind of know how they should be. So what I always say is like, we need to role model what we want the kids to be doing. So the best for the rest of the school year. Have a great summer, and just pretend, if you can, that it's September again for the next couple of weeks.
Sarah?
Yeah. I just share a goal of mine. I think it's really easy to get wrapped up in all of the crazy, overwhelming stuff of the end of the year, and I have been. So just a goal of mine is to do that, to take some time each day and to just enjoy the kids and do some fun things with them, and to end it like you were saying, Brian, on that positive note.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I want to say thanks for inviting me. Just to this I haven't done as an observer any of these calls, but this was a fun topic to talk about. I mean, it feels like an important topic to talk about. So thanks for having this be a conversation piece. Hopefully somebody learned something out of it.
Right on. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing your expertise/experience and knowledge, and your humility. We very much appreciate you guys being here today. So hope to see you soon, and have a great summer. This is our last one for the year, so we'll see you in the fall.
Okay.
Bye, Sheila. We miss you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.